He only stopped because of the baby. The rain was coming down in sheets, and his son was starting to cry in the car seat behind him. So when he saw her soaked, shivering, eyes hollow, he unlocked the passenger door and said, "You can sit in here till it passes." She whispered thank you and climbed in without looking at him. But when she turned to comfort the crying baby in the back, her hands didn't shake, her voice didn't hesitate, and the way she said his name made every hair on the single dad's arms stand up. She wasn't a stranger. She was the mother who vanished the night their son was born. Let's start. The windshield wipers fought against the storm like they were just barely holding on. Daniel's heart squinted through the blur, his left hand gripping the wheel while his right reached back blindly to shake the baby rattle. Near his son's car seat, Noah had been quiet most of the ride home, but now somewhere off Route 83, with no gas stations or open diners for miles, the infant's cries were rising in pitch. "Almost home, buddy," Daniel muttered, glancing at the fuel light flashing. Red dot. Then he saw her, a woman, alone, stumbling down the muddy side of the highway with her arms wrapped around her chest, no umbrella, her clothes plastered to her skin. Her dark brown hair was soaked and stringy, and she looked like she hadn't eaten in days. One barefoot step slipped on gravel, and she went down to one knee. Catching herself hard, Daniel's first instinct was to keep driving. Not because he didn't care, God knew his heart was too soft, but because these days you just didn't know. He had a baby in the car, a reputation to protect, a fragile balance of stability he was barely maintaining between work, daycare, late-night feedings, and loneliness. But then Noah let out a cry, a scared one, sharp and confused, and that was enough. Daniel eased the truck to the side and rolled the window down a crack. "You all right?" The woman didn't look up right away. Her shoulders shook, but she didn't answer. "I've got a baby in the car," Daniel added, firm but not unkind. "I don't have much room, but if you need to get out of the rain." She looked up then, and his heart did something strange. Not recognition, not yet, but something familiar. She walked to the truck window with a limp, eyes heavy with exhaustion. "I'm sorry. I didn't know where else to go. Just for a moment, if that's okay." Daniel reached across the seat and popped the door. "Hop in." She slid inside, pulling the door shut behind her. The cabin instantly filled with the smell of rain, cheap laundry detergent, and something softer, lavender maybe. Her arms wrapped tightly around herself as she glanced into the back seat. The crying stopped. She turned slightly, reaching over with trembling fingers. "Hey there," she whispered. Her voice was soft, too soft. "It's okay, sweetheart." And just like that, Noah quieted. Daniel froze. That wasn't normal. No one, not even the daycare staff, calmed Noah that quickly, especially not strangers. He turned slowly to look at the woman, who was now facing forward, eyes closed, breathing deep as if trying not to cry. "What's your name?" he asked, cautiously. She hesitated. "Emily." He repeated it in his head. Something about it scratched the edge of a memory, a name from a dream, or maybe a nightmare. Daniel looked at her again, really looked this time. A narrow jaw, high cheekbones, a scar barely visible on her left eyebrow. And then he saw it, a tiny freckle just above her collarbone. Same one he remembered from a hospital room 3 years ago. His stomach dropped. This wasn't just some woman lost in the rain. This was her, Emily Bennett, the woman who left without a trace the night their son was born. His son, their son, *. Daniel didn't say a word for the next 15 minutes. He just drove, knuckles white around the steering wheel, windshield wipers hissing, his eyes flicking between the road, the gas light, and the woman beside him who used to haunt his dreams and ruin his sleep. Emily didn't talk either. She stared forward with her soaked hair dripping onto her jeans, one hand lightly brushing her forearm as if trying to feel something again. Noah had fallen asleep in the back. His soft breathing was the only thing keeping Daniel sane. "You okay?" Daniel finally asked, but his voice was clipped, tighter than he meant. Emily nodded. "I'll get out wherever, a diner or a bus stop is fine. I'm not leaving you at a bus stop." She looked at him then, slowly. There was guilt in her eyes, deep, raw, a guilt that couldn't be faked. "I didn't expect you to recognize me," she whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. "I didn't expect to see you again, ever." The truck swerved slightly as his hand jerked the wheel. He pulled it back under control with a shaky breath. "You know what I've been through," his voice trembled. "You know what you did." Emily didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She just looked down at her lap. Daniel's voice dropped into a cold whisper. "You walked out of that hospital and vanished. No calls, no note, not even to ask if he lived." Her lip trembled, but she didn't cry. "I watched that incubator. For straight nights," Daniel went on. "Held his hand through surgery. Signed paperwork you should have signed. And not once did I stop wondering why you left." Emily swallowed hard. "I wanted to call. I did." He scoffed. "But you didn't." "No." "Why?" She finally turned to face him fully, her voice shaking. "Because I thought he'd be better off without me." Daniel blinked. He'd expected excuses, accusations, mental health, money, fear, but not that. "You thought disappearing was better than being his mother?" "I didn't think I was capable of being one." Her eyes finally filled. "I didn't have anyone, Daniel. No support, no job. My own mom died the same night I gave birth. I never told anyone. I was in shock. I was broken." Daniel tightened his grip on the wheel again. This time, it wasn't just anger, it was confusion. Conflict, a memory of how scared he had been back then too. "I was 25, he muttered. "No money, no idea what I was doing. I still stayed." "I know," she said. "I watched from far away for months, but the more I watched, the more I felt like I'd ruin it if I came back." He looked at her sharply. "You watched?" "US, I worked as a janitor at the grocery store across from your apartment. I used to stand behind the loading docks just to hear his laugh." Daniel's stomach twisted. All this time he thought she was dead, or had moved states, but she'd been there, close enough to see Noah's first steps, close enough to recognize his laugh. "Why now?" he asked, bitter. "Why today? Why this storm?" Emily looked down. "Because I have nowhere left to hide. That shut him up." The truck coasted into a small gas station at the edge of town. The storm had slowed to a drizzle. Daniel killed the engine and sat there, staring at his reflection in the fogged-up glass. He didn't know what to do. Didn't know if he wanted to scream or pull her into a hug and cry into her hair. Emily turned to the back seat, gazing at the sleeping child. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "He looks just like you." Daniel looked at Dot, and for the first time since she stepped into his truck, he saw her not as the woman who abandoned him, but as a woman who might have been just as lost as he was back then. Daniel didn't say much as he unlocked the front door. Emily followed quietly, dripping on the doormat, eyes wide like she'd just walked into a dream she didn't think she deserved. The small home smelled of formula, cheap coffee, and laundry. Detergent. There were toys scattered on the floor and a folded-up playpen in the corner. "This way," Daniel said flatly, motioning toward the hallway. "Guest rooms down here. Sheets are clean. Door locks." She paused. "Thank you." He didn't answer, just walked away toward Noah's room and shut the door behind him. Emily stood in the dim hallway for a second longer, unsure what to feel. The last time she'd been under a roof with her son, he'd been barely 6 hours old. Now she was a guest, a stranger, and yet the air felt like home. She changed into a pair of oversized sweatpants and a hoodie Daniel left folded at the foot of the bed. She hadn't eaten. Her legs still ached from walking through the storm, but exhaustion pulled her down hard. Until 3:07 a.m. the cry jolted her out of sleep like a siren. She knew that sound, not from memory, but instinct. Noah. She flew out of bed before she realized what she was doing. Down the hallway, round the corner, and stopped at the door. She didn't want to overstep, but his cries grew sharper. Before she could knock, the door opened. Daniel stood there, shirtless, holding Noah against his chest. "He has nightmares sometimes," he said softly, his voice hoarse. "May I try?" she asked, barely above a whisper. He hesitated, then handed the baby over. Emily rocked him gently, swaying, whispering soft nothings only mothers could craft. And like magic, the crying slowed. Little fists unclenched, tiny eyes fluttered shut. Again, Daniel just stared. She kissed Noah's temple, still swaying in slow rhythm. "I never stopped loving him," she whispered, not looking up. Not for a second. Daniel swallowed hard. I believe you, he said, surprising himself. But love has to be followed by action. She nodded. Then let me stay. Just for a few days. I'll sleep on the couch. I won't ask for anything. Just time. Just a chance to show I'm not running anymore. Daniel looked down at his son. Then at her. 1 week, he said quietly. And if I even sense you're here to hurt him or walk out again, I won't. He nodded. They both stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the past pressing in around them, but for the first time, there was something else in the room. Hope. The next morning, the sun pushed through the blinds like it was trying to burn away what the storm left behind. Emily was already awake. She'd cleaned the kitchen, quietly folded the laundry basket sitting by the couch. She even made scrambled eggs and left a plate on the counter, careful not to push too much. Daniel stepped into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. Noah balanced on one hip. He froze when he saw her. You didn't have to do all that, he muttered. No, she said gently. But I wanted to. He eyed the eggs, but didn't reach for them. Instead, he looked at Noah, who was smiling at her again like it hadn't been 3 years. Like he remembered her somehow. You know, Daniel said, I used to think he had your eyes. Emily looked down, blinking quickly. He does. Daniel pulled out a chair and sat slowly. He didn't say much while eating. He just watched her, watched how she moved, how she spoke to Noah like he was her whole world, like she'd been practicing these words in her head for years. Why didn't you tell me? He finally asked. About your mom. About all of it. She looked at him, shame coloring her face. Because I thought you already had enough to carry. I was falling apart, and I didn't want to bring that mess into your world too. But it was our world, he said, voice low. Silence stretched between them, until a knock came at the door. Daniel stood, wary. A woman stood outside, early 30s, blonde, confident. She smiled when he opened the door. Hey, you didn't text back last night. I got worried. Emily's face went pale. Daniel's did too. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. Emily didn't eavesdrop. She didn't have to. She recognized that tone. She knew the woman's smile wasn't just friendly. Daniel came back, and after a few minutes, rubbing the back of his neck, that was Rachel. We went out a few times. Emily nodded. I'm not asking questions, she said softly. But Daniel's face was conflicted. She didn't know about you. Or Noah's mom. Emily smiled faintly. It's not like I gave you anything to work with. That day passed slowly. Emily stayed quiet, giving space. She helped feed Noah, changed his diaper when Daniel was on a call, and stayed in her corner. But that night, when the baby monitor crackled, Daniel found her already in Noah's room, rocking him gently under the soft hum of a nightlight. She looked up at him. I'm not trying to replace anything, she whispered. I'm just trying to make right what I left broken. Daniel didn't speak, but he didn't ask her to stop either. And sometimes silence says more than words ever could. 3 days later, Daniel found her sitting on the back porch, watching Noah chase a plastic truck across the wooden planks, his giggles echoing into the morning. She looked peaceful, still cautious, still unsure but grounded. Like maybe, just maybe, the storm had passed. I talked to a lawyer today, Daniel said. His voice calm. Emily turned, startled. Why? Because I needed to know where we stand, legally. She swallowed, and he hesitated. You're still on the birth certificate. Technically, you still have parental rights. Her eyes welled up. I didn't come to take him from you, she said quickly. I'd never do that. I know. He sat beside her. There was a long pause before he added, but I also can't let him get hurt again. That kid, he's the only reason I didn't fall apart these last few years. I've worked night shifts, changed diapers on lunch breaks, missed holidays, birthdays, everything, to make sure he felt safe. Emily nodded slowly. That's all I want to. Then prove it. He said gently, come with me tomorrow. She looked at him, confused. To the courthouse. He clarified. Let's file for joint custody. Legally, not just let's see what happens. If you want to be in his life, be in it with your name on the line. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Are you sure? I'm not, he admitted. But I think I want to be. That night, she read Noah a bedtime story. for the first time. He curled up against her and said "Mama" in a sleepy mumble before drifting off. It was the first time he'd ever said it. Daniel heard it from the hallway, and for a moment, something in his chest cracked open. The next morning, they drove together in silence to the county courthouse. It wasn't dramatic. No speeches, no breakdowns, just paperwork, fingerprints, a judge who raised an eyebrow when he read the history but nodded when he saw their commitment. When they stepped outside, Daniel held the door for her, not like a husband, not like a stranger, but like a man who had started seeing her for who she was now, not who she had been. "You don't owe me forgiveness," she said quietly, slipping on her coat. "I learned that, day by day." Daniel looked at her. He said "Mama" last night. "Did you hear him?" She nodded, tears burning behind her smile. "Then start there," he said. "Be the mother he thinks you are." As they buckled Noah into the car seat together, their hands brushed. It wasn't romantic. It was something deeper. Redemption, forgiveness, a second chance earned, not given. And as the truck pulled away from the courthouse, rain started to fall again, light, this time, like a memory. But inside the truck, for the first time in years, there was peace and a family finally whole.